Every now and again, we'll cover a mini PC on the channel that I'll find interesting, and Beelink reached out and wanted to send us this. This is called the Beelink Me Mini. And my friends, it's not what you think it is because it has a little secret. That's right, ladies and gents. This is a 6-bay NVMe M.2 SSD NAS device, not your typical mini PC. Let's take a little bit of a closer look at this because it has a few quirks and it has a few interesting little features. Before we dive in and take a bit of a look at this, there's a couple things that I learned about the Me Mini while reviewing and testing this unit. First of all, it uses a very underpowered Intel CPU, uses the Intel Twin Lake N150 CPU, and you're lucky to see this thing hit around about 800 megahertz when it's doing stuff. This is not designed for gaming. It is severely underpowered, and according to our buddy Rob at RobTech, about 30% slower than any other N150 device out on the market. Now, the thing is with this, Rob and I did a little bit of a, let's call it a TechCU, Tech Cinematic Universe crossover, where we kind of went through and reviewed this together to see what the deal was. So we spent a lot of time after hours coming to our conclusions. Although they might be slightly different depending on your use case, make sure you go and check out RobTech's video. He dives into all of the gaming performance and all of the Windows performance, because if you purchase the version with the Crucial Drive, it does have Windows 11 pre-installed on it. However, we're not going to be doing that in this video, but let's circle back to the configuration. So first of all, the CPU is the Intel Twin Lake N150, and it clocks up at around to 3.6 gigahertz, which, to be honest, with Linux, I didn't see it even getting close to that whatsoever. It does have 12 gigs of RAM, which is LPDDR5 memory at 4800 megatransfers, which is very nice, especially if you're using this for a storage server. It's got 64 gigs of eMMC memory with a locked bootloader, which I'm going to show you how to unlock it a little bit later on in the video. Up the front, there's two USB ports. There's one USB Type-C port and one USB Type-A port. Both of these ports are 10 gigabit USB. There's also a power button as well as a power light and a status indication LED. Looking at the bottom, there's a clear CMOS button on the bottom of the unit, and at the back, where all the fun stuff happens, that's what they usually say, there is a figure 8 power connector. There's a USB Type-A port, which is USB 2.0, which is an always-on port. Now, the funnest part here, ladies and gents, is the Ethernet. This uses dual 2.5 gigabit Ethernet. These are Intel i226V adapters, as well as an HDMI port. But circling back to the Ethernet on here, these Intel adapters are fantastic, and they are widely compatible with lots of different operating systems, right? So yeah, you don't just have to use this for Windows. You can use this with anything, including, if you really wanted to, VMware ESXi, because those adapters are technically compatible, but we didn't do that in this video. As well as that, it's got Wi-Fi 6 with a removable adapter, so if you really wanted to update this and upgrade it, you could. Also, it's got Bluetooth 5.2, which is on chip with this Wi-Fi controller. Again, not something that I would really recommend using, and to be honest, I think this is something they could have excluded from it to drop the price a little bit, because if you're using this for its intended use case, you don't need Wi-Fi. It's nice to have, but yeah, you just don't need it. Both of the versions of this have the exact same CPU, they have the same RAM, they have the same eMMC, which is the version without the drives, is only $209 US. And that to me already screams very, very good value. The version that has the crucial 2 terabyte NVMe M.2 drive, which is the one that they actually sent us, which I removed for this video, goes for around about $329 US, which is about what it would cost to add your own 2 terabyte drive to this anyway. No one's using this for Windows, I'm going to be honest. Like, if you're buying this and you want to use this as a desktop PC, just buy any other mini PC on the market. There's heaps of other ones that are way faster. When I say that, I mean, go to Rob's channel and look at basically any other mini PC review that he's done, because he's reviewed all of them and he's the expert. He's the mini PC guy. I'm just the guy who knows what to do when it comes to really quirky things with these mini PCs. I don't want to use this as a gaming PC. I don't want to do anything on this other than use it for its intended purpose, to be network attached storage. So let me show you how we get TrueNAS Scale running on this, or for the pedantic people out there, TrueNAS Community Edition, and it's got a lot of quirks. But luckily, you've got a Nick, and he knows a thing or two about Linux, and he's here to help you guys get it up and running, although it is insanely quirky. Yeah, let's take a look. First things first, the Mi Mini can be very, very picky when it comes to installing TrueNAS on the eMMC. So make sure you use a USB stick that will work. This may take a couple goes just in case, because like I mentioned, it is very, very picky with USB sticks and doing the installation with this method. So first of all, let's install TrueNAS Scale. Look, it says Scale, not Community Edition. We need to do something a little bit quirky, but ultimately not too crazy to get this to work. Trust me, I've already done this. I put in the hard work to make sure this works. Once we're in the installer, drop to the shell. The first thing we want to do is check the read and write flags of the boot block on the eMMC. So the way we do this is ls-blk, and it'll show the RO type. As you can see here, it says it's 1, which means that the boot block of the eMMC is set to be read only. We can change this. So the way we change this is by simply writing a 0 to that part of the configuration. So what we're going to do is echo 0 greater than sys block mmc boot 0 / force RO, which is read only, and that will clear the flag. You can check this again. We can do ls-blk, and you can see that that flag is now changed to 0. We also want to do it on the other boot device. So we'll change that boot 0 to boot 1, and then we'll force that to be the same. We'll check it again with ls-blk, and you can see it's all set to 0, but we're not done yet. We need to 0 out the eMMC just in case there's some partitions floating around. You don't want to reboot through any of this process, and it sounds crazy, but trust me, this is how you do it. So we want to do dd if equals dev 0 of equals dev mmc blk 0 count equals 1 0 2 4. Right now we want to type exit, so we go back to the installer. This is a crazy step, but you'll want to install. It's going to show the eMMC here, and we're going to hit OK, proceed with installation. Just do configure web UI, because we're going to have to do this a bunch of times. Sometimes it works straight away. Sometimes it takes about 5 to 10 goes for this to work, but trust me, it will eventually work. Are we getting lucky the first time? No. So if it doesn't work, just keep retrying and it'll eventually work. We'll see how many times it takes. That's 2, up to number 3, number 4, number 5. It will eventually work. 6, 7. There it is. 7th try it works. There you go. You basically just have to keep retrying until it works, and it will work after a little while. It's weird, but I think what is happening is there is a part of the Python installation script that basically references any other type of device, not eMMC, and basically we're brute forcing that script to fail in the background without you seeing what the output is. It doesn't run in any type of verbose mode at all, but yeah, eventually do that a bunch of times and it will work. It's strange, but you know, that's how I figured out how to get it to work. All right, installation proceeding. Installation is now complete. What you want to do is remove the USB stick from the front or the back, doesn't matter which port you've plugged it into, and away we go. And we have the bootloader here. Look at that, TrueNAS Scale. See, TrueNAS Scale, that's what it's called. What we want to do then is it'll give you the IP address in the console for TrueNAS. You want to navigate to that IP address, and we're going to set up the TrueNAS admin account, and we're just going to set the password to anything, literally the word anything, and hit sign in. Here's the fun part, right? We're going to set up some storage. So first of all, these disks have been used in a ZFS pool before. So I'm just going to show you the disks here. It'll show 6 M.2 drives I've already played around with 5 of them in all of my testing phase or whatever. What we're going to do is create a new pool. So we're going to go create pool. We're going to call it me_mini_new. Just be a little bit different, right? What we're going to do is we're going to select the discs that I want to use because I've already used these discs in a pool. So don't worry about it, right? We're just going to use all 6 of the discs. We're going to create a data VDEV just to play around with this. We'll do RAID Z1 and we're going to say, hey, we want this to be 6 drives wide. We want a single VDEV. We're going to go save and go review. And then we're going to create the pool. This will give us a total pool of 4.66 TB bytes. Create pool, confirm, and we'll just allow it to format all the drives and away we go. With the Me Mini, it's always going to say that there's 2 unused disks because those unused disks are the eMMC boot volumes, which we just don't want to touch, right? Okay, now we'll create a new data set. We'll say, hey, let's create a new data set called Mini-Me. We'll set this to be SMB. We'll create an SMB share just to make this easy. And we'll show you some advanced options here. You can set compression up here or whatnot. I would typically set up compression when you're setting up the data set itself. I'm not going to set any crazy compression here just because it doesn't really matter for the purposes of this, but we're not done yet, right? Because we need to then do some other little bitties. So, all right, we're going to set up some link aggregation to get 5 gigabits out of the 2.5 gigabit interfaces on this system. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to do this in the console of the TrueNAS installation because just makes a whole lot more sense here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go configure network interfaces. We're going to press 1. We have no settings whatsoever. We're going to create a new interface by pressing N. We're going to set this up as a link aggregation. We're going to call this bond 0. We're going to set up DHCP. Aliases and stuff, we don't really need that yet. The protocol for lag, we're going to set this as LACP, and then we're going to add the link aggregation ports. We're going to add both interfaces to our aggregation trunk, and that's it. We're going to just hit save, and we're going to apply these settings. Now, what's going to happen is we'll persist with these settings. It's not going to get an IP address right away. We're going to head on over to Unify. If this is what you've got, this type of setup anyway, or a managed switch will be quite similar, and we'll set up a link aggregation in the switch itself because it won't just work with this type of link ag. So on this switch, you'll see that there are 2 2.5 gig links. Now, what we're going to do is select one of the interfaces and we're going to go manual settings. We're going to change the operation from switching to aggregating. And then the aggregate ports are going to be port 4 and 5. We know this because that's what I set up, and we're going to apply those changes. What's going to happen is we head on back over to TrueNAS, and it's going to know exactly what to do. By refreshing the interface, you can see that we have a single IP address for both of those interfaces because we set up that link aggregation. Now, by navigating to that IP address, we can log back into our TrueNAS web interface, and we're going to reconfigure the dashboard. We're going to change the interface here to that bond or that link aggregation. You will now see that we've got a 5 gigabit connection with both of those 2.5 gig connections aggregated. All right, let's test the network link speed of the Me Mini. I've mapped the network drive, and I didn't talk about creating any accounts or whatnot when it came to TrueNAS. We've covered that in other videos, but let's just do a few tests so you can see what this is like. As you can see, I'm using the most goonerific skin for Crystal Disk Mark. I thought it was funny. I never used this skin, but you know, it is here. We're going to run a series of 1 gig tests so you can see how this works. We're going to switch from C drive to O drive, which is our network share. I like that number. Very nice. And we're going to hit all and we're going to send it. And watch the network throughput in both Task Manager and in TrueNAS itself. We can see what kind of link speeds we're getting here. Speed, we're maxing out at around about 2.5 gig. Remember, this is technically a 5 gig connection, but we're also limited by the CPU. We're limited by the NVMe drives. And to be honest, there's quite a few limitations when it comes to this type of setup. The idea of the Mi Mini is really good, but in practice, it's really not the fastest device ever when it comes to doing this type of test. Running the write speed test again, you can see that we're creeping up to that 2.5 gigabit mark. Not quite 5 gigabit. The other thing is, even if we do change the link aggregation mode to load balance or any other type of link aggregation mode, it doesn't matter what it is. Even though it says we have a 5 gig link, we're still maxing out at around about 2.5 gigabit, and using a single interface nets other strange results, as you're about to find out. There's a couple conclusions from all that. First of all, when you're using LACP or load balancing or any type of link aggregation with the Mi Mini, what I'm finding is with link aggregation enabled, not just using a single adapter, we basically just half the CPU usage, which is a good thing. So if you're worried about thermal output and basically your thermal overhead with a device like this, I mean, it's an N150, guys, so you can see what's happening here. The Ethernet controller is handling all of that, although we're not getting 5 gigabit speed. We're only getting 2.5 gig, and it doesn't matter which aggregation mode we use, we're not even getting close to that. And there's a few reasons for it. First of all, TrueNAS can be a little bit finicky when it comes to link aggregation, even though it's built into Linux itself. The other thing is the switch that I used. It's a 10 gig switch. It should have been able to do it without a problem. And it did do it without any problems, because when I put this on another switch that I have, which is another UniFi switch, yeah, it did exactly the same thing. So there is a few quirks with that. As well as that, installing TrueNAS on this is an absolute pain in the ass, especially if you're not an experienced Linux user. Now, the reason for this is actually not down to this mini PC at all. It's more of a quirk with TrueNAS's installer. There is a few lines of Python in the installer that just don't like eMMC drives, and basically you can comment them out and it works. I'm not going to go into how to modify a Python script for the installer when I can just give you a couple lines of code to execute in a shell that's going to fix everything. Well, to get it installed anyway. Okay, so we know that the performance isn't stellar. We know that the price is pretty excellent. What else does the Mi Mini have going for it? Well, there's a few things that I noticed. First of all, this one is up for debate. It's got an integrated power supply. Now, most mini PCs do not have an integrated power supply. And I think really what Beelink's done is done this for packaging reasons. That was harder than it should have been. It makes it look smaller, it takes up a smaller footprint, and if you're installing this in your home trying to be a bit of a discrete device, then it's pretty excellent for that use case. Not only that, you don't have to just use this as a NAS. You could install Proxmox on here, run a whole stack of containers, you could run Home Assistant on here, and basically this little box here, if you wanted it to, could run your entire smart home without a hitch. Here's the other thing with the N150. Typically with stability and mini PCs with the N150, especially when you're using it with things like TrueNAS, have been really bad. The GMK Tech one, from what I hear Rob talking about, is very unstable when it comes to file transfer. So I think what Beelink has done here is kind of, I'm going to say the G word, they gimped the performance on this a little bit to make it extremely stable. The other thing is, this is dead silent under full load. It doesn't make a sound. With that intake on the top, which I think is pretty darn clever, with the whole thing is just a heat sink. I'm getting a workout kind of playing around with this, but the design is excellent. All right, the bottom line. Do I think the Beelink Mi Mini is worth your hard-earned money? And this is a bit of a tricky conclusion to come to, considering I've only used this with TrueNAS. That was all I wanted to try this with. I would say if you were to buy it for $209 US without the included drive, Absolutely. If you were to buy any other NAS enclosure with 6 bays, with any type of CPU or memory configuration close to this from QNAP or Acer Store or anyone, you'd be paying at least 3 to 4 times the price. So I would say in terms of that, it's excellent value. It really, really is. The issue then being, you've got to populate it with NVMe M.2 drives, and that, my friends, is where it starts to get very expensive. So in terms of that, yes. Right. I'm glad Rob did a thing in his video showing you guys how to open and close this, because you've got to take these feet off. Anyway, it's got that good tech smell too. Adam will like that one. Loves a good tech smell. All right, my friends, I have a final question for you. Would you like to see me getting Proxmox and or ESXi running on this? I would love to see what the deal is. I've been using Proxmox purely as an LXC container host lately, and although I was very hesitant to Proxmox before, I'm in love with its containerization features. I really, really love it, and I've moved all of our containers over to running on Proxmox now. So yeah, let me know if that's something you want to see. Also, as I mentioned about 80,000 times in this video, go and check out RobTech. He's a very good friend of mine. We play Call of Duty together every single night. He's like part of our Warzone squad, so I bet you didn't know that. And he is the master of mini PCs. He's the go-to guy. He knows everything about them. He's got heaps of information. Go and subscribe to RobTech. Show him some love. Tell him that Claire and I sent you. Is that how that works? And let's get him to 100K subs by the end of the year. He needs a silver play button, guys. It's only fair. The guy works harder than anybody else I know on YouTube. And that's going to do it. Me Mini out. Whoa, look at this. You want to see some magic, guys? Check this out. Ready? Tech magic. Ready? I'm going to fade out, and the Me Mini is going to fade out, and there's going to be nobody left. See, I told you. We're really living in the future.